Good morning, members. When the suspension was taken, we were on standing finance committee. Until that, we will return.
Good morning. We are now in Standing Finance Committee. Continuing with Head 35, we invite the Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs and her team into the well. He's still doing an hour here, right? He's still doing an hour? We have another hour on this head. I urge you to keep your questions and comments to 3 minutes so that we can get in as many questions as possible. We continue with the Honourable Member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And good morning to the Minister and to our staff, of course. In keeping with the direction of the Chair, I'll be very brief. But I just feel that this ministry is doing such important work, Minister. First, I wish to commend you for the wonderful work you are doing in the Ministry of People's Empowerment, and I wish you and your staff all the best. So I have two very brief questions. The first is in relation to, because persons complain about the role of the social workers, sometimes the welfare officers, but I do know there was a time, and I'm not so sure what's the present position, where the client-to-staff ratio in the ministry responsible for assisting the most vulnerable was such that it made it very difficult for persons to be able to effectively serve that population. I'm just wondering what is the current ratio, or at least the current workload, because I do know that it was very, very stressful on the staff. And to give Barbadians a sense of what really was the challenge in the ministry, because I know persons would like immediate and one-on-one attention, but I think we are all aware of that challenge, and I just wonder if that's still the case. That's the first. And then the second is specifically as it relates to the elderly population, Madam Chair. And I'd always had a concern. I wrote my master's dissertation on the elderly, and I always had a concern in relation to the way the elderly is treated sometimes. I mean, we've heard reports of the elderly being abused, people taking their pension, cashing their checks. What checks and balances are in place now to protect the elderly population? And of course, given the age that we are in these days with Corona and the concerns related to them, what level of care, especially in NAB, is being assigned to address some of these concerns? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Good morning, honourable members. Your concern is a valid one, Minister. We do have tremendous challenges, and they're even larger now than ever before since the Department of the Elderly has been assigned to us in that particular way. And yes, we would always have to make requests for additional staff, because you will appreciate that if our numbers are growing by the minute, then we will need the necessary staff members to help to facilitate some of the requests. And of course, there are those vulnerable families as well who rely on the services through the social workers and others. And therefore, we are making our efforts to be able to ease that particular situation. So the client to staff ratio still needs to be improved as we go on. We take on cognizance of the economic situation, and here and there we've been trying our best to ramp up the numbers, but unless the finances are available, we'll not be able to do it to the best of our ability. But we are trying, and I'm sure that some of the honourable members here members of staff here with me, the distinguished members of staff here with me, will want to do, elaborate on it a bit in both the area of the clients and of course those elderly folk who need that extra special attention. And our home health workers have the training, they go in and do what they have to do. But as I said, our numbers are growing and we really need to step up whatever services need to be offered so that we can make their lives comfortable as they age and go through these various challenges. Madam PS, would you let me to, yeah? Yes. All right, I want to focus a bit on them, on the elderly, where we have done our surveys. A number of agencies have given us information, and we have got a listing of our most vulnerable individuals. And that has come up a lot because we were looking at disaster management and how climate change is impacting on the society here and in the rest of the world. And so our most vulnerable 500 individuals, they have been visited. Some of our social workers are still in the field. They are working with the 500 most vulnerable families as well. So that is an extra load that they're carrying at this point in time. And I got reports even from some constituents who said, persons have come here to me asking questions, and I believe that you may have sent them. I was a little reluctant, but then when they asked the questions, I understood the reason why. They wanted to make sure that if there were any challenges with bad weather, the flooding, and how stop blowing off and so, that we will know how to send the first responders to treat to them, because some of them will be disabled, some of them shut in, and so on. So that aspect of it, we have started to look at. Our numbers from the National Assistance Board, they are growing, and the daily service that is offered to the clients, then the requests are growing, and therefore the workload of those home helpers has grown even more, and therefore that is the way, and we are looking at, we have started already to address some aspects of the policy that need to be upgraded in order for us to put a good policy for the elderly in place and to start looking at the legislation. I'm not going to elaborate on some of the comments made by the Honourable Minister, because we know that many of them are not treated well, but there are some families that do good work, and even excellent work comes from persons in the community who have a care, because it's my godmother, my godfather, my uncle, my great uncle, and so my neighbor who has been good to us when we were small. So that is still feeding through from people in communities, and I think we need to continue to get persons to do that kind of voluntary service. Miss Wilson, you may wish to add anything to the elderly component that has been raised briefly, and then we could probably look at the client staff in another conversation. Ms. Wilson is the director of the Home Health Department.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, members of Parliament. Again, my name is Sharon Wilson, the Director of the National Assistance Board. In reference to the COVID situation, COVID-19, NEB, we've taken a look at our staff as well as our programs. As you know, we have an aging workforce, so some of this information applies to our staff. We've been trying to secure our sites to make sure that there's information available to staff and also information available to clients. We've been having several meetings with staff on every level. With our heads of section, our supervisors, we've been having site meetings in order to get each site prepared for the eventuality. As you would know, we have Vauxhall Senior Citizens Village. We are putting together visitation protocols, And we are going to reduce our visiting time at the village. We have secured a space where persons can visit their loved ones, and we're also securing a sick bay at the Vauxhall Senior Citizens Village. With the Jarvis Dunner Elderly Daycare Program, we have secured a sick bay in the event that someone is sick until they can get help. We have restricted the way participants are dropped off at the Jarvis Dunner Elderly Daycare Center. In terms of our shelter, the Clyde Gollop Shelter, we have designated an area where persons can visit. We have also reduced the visiting time at this shelter. In terms of our home care program, we have been trying to get supplies for our home care workers in terms of sanitizers that they would be able to use to take them into the field. We have been giving them the information that they need. There's also going to be the trainer session where staff will be trained, and then they would be able to train other persons in regard to the COVID-19. Also, we are having a general staff meeting. We're pulling everyone together. And since our chairman is in the medical profession, she has agreed to assist us in sharing information with staff so that they would be able then in turn to share it with recipients. We also have 20 recreational activities programs in all of the parishes in Barbados. And right now, since we are at level 0, the recreation programs are continuing to meet. We are also ensuring that they have the supplies that they need in order to sanitize areas. And also, we are in the process of putting together care kits for our home care recipients in the community. And those care kits will be for persons who live alone. As I would have said at Wednesday's sit-in, our February statistics indicate that we have 1,040 recipients, and almost 40% of those live alone. Right now, the home care staff are trying to outreach to as many relatives as possible in the event that we have to move to another level that will be more restrictive. But we are looking to ensure that persons who live alone and don't have as much family support, that they will get a care packet to use.
I think you had asked about ratios. Yeah, the honorable member wanted to know the ratios of home care workers to recipients.
Generally, all the heads, really, social care, persons who offer care to the clients.
The ratio of home care workers to staff, home care workers to recipients, it depends on the tasks that the home care worker has to do.
I was more concerned about the social workers.
We have a social work program, and our social workers usually carry about 25 cases per worker. In addition to that, our social workers in our social work program do all of the investigations, the home visits, and the referrals. In addition to that, they also make assessments for the garbage and sewage contribution. to determine whether the elderly are eligible for that relief or not.
Thank you. As a follow-up, Madam Chair, I'm interested because, I mean, we often, when I'm wearing this hat, we often give persons in this particular ministry a hard time. And I just want, for all the heads, if possible, Madam Chair, if you'd indulge me, allow the heads to speak about that ratio, because as far as I can recall, it was taxing even with the best of intentions to deliver the kind of services that you would like to deliver. So welfare, childcare, preferably.
Just invite Mrs. Willett, who is in charge of the welfare department, to please explain what's happening in her department briefly, so that members will be apprised of exactly what the situation is.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of Parliament. Presently, we have ratios of about 250 families per officer, and in the St. Michael areas, this number can be even higher. It can reach 300 plus.
What is the ideal number? What ratio are we seeking to get to eventually? Because it sounds like a lot.
The ideal number? Well, I don't know if there's an ideal number. We need more staff, really, because if we are to really do the social work, we're supposed to really helping the family, not just giving a handout, but doing that in-depth work with them. We really can't do it with these numbers.
The other heads.
I'll then ask ma'am for the director of the Child Care Board to please give her response as well, so that the public and all of us here can get a better understanding as to what is exactly happening in that general area.
Okay.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Joan Crawford. I'm the Director of the Child Care Board. With regard to the number of staff, we have 17 child care officers, and the caseloads range from 49 to 200.
The natural follow-up would be, is this ideal in the first scenario, and is this allowing you to practice the kind of care that you need to practice at this child care board?
It is not ideal when you look at international standards. The range for international is between 25 and 40 cases, or 25 and 45. That is the international range for workers, social workers to clients. But with regard to the Child Care Board, you would realize that some of our cases are stuck in court, so you would not need that one-on-one as frequent. However, with a ratio of 200 families or individuals, this is definitely not ideal situation, especially when child protection, which can have severe psychological impact, that is not ideal. And we have one psychologist.
A burning question I have. I heard the director, ironic coming from me, of the NAB, though, speaking about the measures with respect to COVID. I'm trying to understand the reasoning for restricting visitors, for instance, for the shelter, considering is not comparable to, for instance, the geriatric hospital where the residents stay, as opposed to a shelter that they come and go all day. What was the rationale for restricting visitors, considering these people that live there are actually in the community every day? And have we considered the risks of the elderly people, on the recipients for the NAB, the home care scheme, that part of it, with respect to workers coming into the homes of the elderly and protecting the elderly? Sounds bad, but from them. In other words, they tend to go to several different houses and then enter an elderly person's home. Is that, I know they need the help, but does that open some risk for the elderly person as well?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have been given direct attention to this matter for the last 2 weeks, and we have got a draft response protocol that we've prepared to be able to sensitize. And from what I've been gathering from the sessions we've had, the restriction at the centers would be also associated with visitors coming in from the outside, and creating whatever challenge there will be, because we bring in things in our clothing and the way and Barbadians love to embrace. And that is something that I find great difficulty in not being able to hug my friends and so, but of course I have to follow procedure as well because of the contamination that may take place. And it's nothing deliberate, it is just the person may be carrying the virus. And so we felt it would have been safer to do it, granted that we have so much limited staff already. And then what has to be put in place once a person contracts the disease, where they have to go, what they have to go through, and the close proximity of those residents, especially if you look at the Clegolop Center. It is an open space generally, and almost everybody is exposed to whatever their communal bathrooms and so we felt that it is safest at this point in time to put restrictions in place, and the same will obtain at the center at the Vauxhall, as well as that at Lancaster, because to safeguard is the better proactive thing to go do than to wait until something happens and then we are operating on that premise. But we have had meetings before among us, as I said, and we also have a meeting immediately after the sessions here today with the official health authorities for them to help us to continue to flesh out what we have prepared, because we want to be on the safest side. Because at the end of the day, people may be homeless, they may be elderly, they may be impoverished, but they deserve the same kind of treatment that other persons in this society will want meted out to them.
I agree.
So we are trying to safeguard.
I agree, but my point was, and we can move on from here, is that the members of the Clegolop Center live outside the Clegolop Center. Some go to work. They're not restricted to in-house, right? They're not restricted to in-house. So how will visiting hours assist with curtailing the spread? In other words, I leave home every day to come here, I mingle with the rest of the population, and I go back home. How is that different from a visitor coming in? I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to ask.
I'm kind of understanding it, ma'am, but because we want to put all safeguards, because we don't want anybody to believe we're going to put the safeguards for child care, we're going to put it for the home care, but we have ignored those who are homeless. And usually they're at the bottom line of everything in the society. We want to make sure we do it across the board so that the treatment that is meted out to one will be meted out to all, in an effort that we fulfill our role as the managers of the numerous institutions that are under our watch.
Thank you very much.
And that is as easy as I may be able to answer you. Granted that I don't have that doctoral training and so on as a lay preacher and a lay person. That is how we're conceiving it, because we want to be able to eliminate any cause of concern or illness on our members or those persons who are under our care as clients. And that is the gist of what I can really respond to at this point in time.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning to Minister and team. The question I have speaks to gender equality. That is Program 632. Sub-program, I think 438. And I just wanted to find out from the ministry what is happening in the ministry as it relates to moving the agenda of gender equality forward. We're hearing a lot happening at the international level. Sometimes I've heard the comment that we're not often hearing a lot of what is happening locally. And I'd just like some explanation as to what is happening in that area, gender equality within the ministry for the country.
Thank you very much,
I have
Honourable
a
Member.
follow-up question after that.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Mrs. Boyce, who is managing that department, to give her response. But the Honourable Member can be assured, and the rest of Barbados, the fact that it was called the Women's Affairs Bureau before, and now we call it gender, the emphases are to incorporate our males into whatever is happening so that they too can be the ones who are heading up families and working with individuals and so on. For too long we've heard of men in crisis, and Mrs. Boyce, who is the Gender Affairs Manager, she will be able to give us some insights as to what has been going on, to be able to help to strengthen our men and give them that kind of measure of authority and love and affection that is necessary, especially when we see what's happening with our male children, our boys in particular, at this point in time in our history. So I'll give over to Mrs. Boyce, please.
Good morning.
Chair, morning, members of Parliament. The Bureau of Gender Affairs is the focal point for gender in Barbados. We have concentrated over the years in terms of women empowering both men and women. We have done a lot in terms of the men since 2000, where we started to look to address the needs of men through health care. We've done a lot of work in that area where we sought to encourage men to take more responsibility for their own health. And we've also done, in collaboration with the men's health groups as well as the Anglican Men's Association, we have done a lot of public awareness in that area. We've also done a lot in terms of sensitization about domestic violence, both for males and females. We've done a lot of work at the community level in terms of paternity leave, where we not only just sought to get the public perception on whether paternity leave was necessary or not, but to help men and women to understand the role of men within the family and how important it was for men to be involved at the area of their children's lives from inception, because research has shown that when men are involved in their children's lives from inception, that there's a greater family bonding. We've also done a lot in terms of masculinity. We've targeted the secondary schools, the third and the fourth formers mostly, and we have an annual program where we teach the young boys from the secondary school about what it is to be a male. We've thought about what it is to deal with conflict and to handle conflict. In addition to that, we've done a lot of training with our officers throughout the ministries, where we're trying to get a number of focal points where they will be able to look at the policies and programs of their own institution or department and to ensure that a gender component is taken place. In addition to that, we've done a lot of work in terms of HIV/AIDS, where we have sessions not only with men and women from the church or from the schools, but we've gone into the community. We have moved from bringing persons into rooms to have sessions where we go into the communities and we have discussion with the communities on HIV, and as I said before, the paternity leave. This year, what we're looking to do is a lot of public education. We're looking to have public awareness around men and education, because the statistics have shown that a lot of men are not opting to go on to tertiary education at the university level, that mostly it is the females that you find at the university. And what we are hoping to do this financial year is to have a small group session with a number of men to get an idea of why they are not participating within the tertiary level, and then we can look at how we can use that information to devise a program to help more men see the benefits of this tertiary education. We're going to also do more work in the area of domestic violence. We have recently formed a national committee on gender-based violence, and that committee is supposed to be meeting next month. And one of the tasks of that committee is to come up with a program or a gender action plan on domestic violence, and they're also going to be responsible for sensitizing the public and doing further work in that area. We also know that climate change is a recent and a new emerging area in the area of gender, And what we are planning to do, we have had discussions with the Ministry of Environment. We have a draft national action plan on gender, but it does not include indicators for climate change. And what we're doing now is having discussions with the Ministry of Environment to see how that part can be included within the document. Now, the Bureau of Gender Affairs is a very small department. We only have one director, one research officer, one program officer. And the amount of work that we need to do or we are required to do, it is difficult and it's challenging with just one person. If one person is out and no one comes to replace that person, then the other officer now work double. What we do is a lot of collaboration. We've collaborated last week. We had sessions with the students of the Institute for, it's what we call the Polytechnic. And we had around 35 young men. And we went through a process of what is HIV. We also did how their behavior can make them susceptible to HIV. And we also give them tools to help them make informed decisions. Also last week, it was a Saturday, we went into the community, the Highgate Hall community, and we used football as a way of engaging the young men. And also at that community, Highgate Hall community is the core, the cadet corps, and we had those young men, and we had a whole over 200 persons at that activity where we were able to sensitize them and give them information on the various areas that would impact young people's lives.
Thank you, Ms. Gooden, is it? Could you state your full name for the Hanshaw? Patricia Boyce.
All right, thank you very much, Officer. A comment, Madam Chair, this is not a second question, this is a comment. There was mention of paternity leave, and I think up to last Thursday, my ministry was awaiting a comment from yourselves, I believe, so that we can move that, because we are working together on that agenda. So we are looking forward to your soonest response so we can go to Cabinet. The second question I have also relates to gender, but also the wider mandate of the ministry, which involves a lot of care for the elderly, care for children. And women are traditionally, but also disproportionately, the caregivers in society. And I've heard you mention a lot of programs, HIV, AIDS, education, etc. Any programs that speak to sensitizing men in the area of caregiving? Because we know that women do most of the unpaid care work in societies, but especially in Western societies, including ours here in Barbados. Any views on that, especially given that we have an aging population and that your ministry currently has as part of its nomenclature the fact that it is responsible for elder affairs?
Last year we had...
Just turn on your mic, please. Thanks.
Okay, sorry. Last year we had a session on men and relationships targeting the elderly population. We also had discussion on men and retirement and how they relate to their families during that particular period. So that when we did the paternity leave discussion, when we look at how men are viewed within the home, we're trying to show that it is not, when we talk about fatherhood, we normally think about just financial contribution. And if within those discussions, we try to show that it is not just financial contribution, but also emotional, where the emotional attachment between the parent and the child is also important. So we also touch those areas.
Thank you. My final question relates to people living with disabilities. And as I interact with people living with disabilities or people representing organizations that cater to people living with disabilities, I get the impression that there is the feeling that Barbadians generally, including us as policymakers, are not as sensitive as we should be to the needs of people living with disabilities. And I'm asking a question based on an experience that I had. So a question and maybe a suggestion as well. I was part of an experience done by, I don't remember the lady's name, but the company was Catalyst Caribbean, I think it was, where it was a practical sensitization of leaders, people who were thought to be leaders across the society, so that they had, to some degree, as close to a first-hand experience as they possibly could have. My question, and part of it is a suggestion because I'm throwing that out as something that maybe could be considered. My question is, are you, and I'm speaking to the ministry because this is not necessarily gender, this is people living with disabilities. My question to the minister and to the ministry, are you satisfied with the work being done to sensitize the society generally to the requirements, to the nuances, to the peculiarities with people as it relates to people living with disabilities? And if you are, fine. If you aren't, what else do you think we can do, both as ministry and society, to address those peculiar needs? Some peculiar, some general.
Thank you very much, Minister. We have had activities, programs going thus far, as far as I'm aware, but it is not in any particular one department. I can ask Miss Lynn Armstrong, who is heading up the AIDS HIV department, to be able to speak to what they have been doing in association with the National Assistance Board and the same department. And of course, Mr. Wayne Nurse, who is here as the person managing the disabilities unit, and the kind of synergies that he has got with the numerous organizations that work and serve the disabled community. I believe that he may be able to answer some of the queries that you would have raised. And indeed, thank you for the suggestion, because we are open to suggestions and recommendations, and so coming from all members of this society. I'll give over to Mr. Nurse, who will be able to speak to it with a little more authority, because it is under his watch, although we have the synergies within all the other departments under the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of Parliament. My name is Wayne Nurse, the Acting Director for the National Disabilities Unit. It is indeed true that persons in Barbados should be more sensitized to the work of the plight of persons with disabilities, because anyone can become disabled, just so. But we at the National Disabilities Unit, we try our best to help those who are with disabilities, and the staff of the 3 social workers, and they have to deal with the entire country of Barbados. They are divided into north, south, central, with the majority of the applications coming from the central zone. This is St. Michael. But it is true that persons need to be sensitized. We have different programs and so on where we actually help those with disabilities, but I know Mr. Jordan was more looking at sensitizing Barbados in general. Even though we help, if everyone plays their part in Barbados to recognize the needs of those with disabilities and actually play their part, I think we'll be able to help more persons, because with an elderly population, they also need the services of things that we offer, like wheelchairs and so on. So it's true that we need to play our part, everyone, not just us from the Disability Unit and also from the Barbados Council for the Disabled. Everyone needs to play their part in sensitizing the public.
Thank you. Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A pleasant good morning to Minister and her entire team. I want to first start off by thanking you, Minister, because I would have made a promise like yourself. A couple of months ago, to the good people of Christchurch West Central, specifically those in Silver Hill. And when we opened the Chesterfield Brewster Center, we made a promise. You know, there's one axiom eruditely elucidated by none other than my favorite artist, Gregory Isaac himself, which speaks specifically to a promise being a comfort for a food. We don't have foolish people in Christchurch West Central. And today I want to say the bright, good people of Christchurch West Central want to express sincere gratitude to you and your team for providing us with a welfare officer that will seek to cater to the entire Christchurch. And I want to say today, I want to call his name too. There is a gentleman, an excellent officer by the name of Fabian Jones. I want to pay homage to him in this entire chamber today. And for those who are in earshot and eyeshot, he is doing a tremendous job up there. And I want the whole of Barbados to know that there are good people in your department, Minister. Your ministry is very integral to the development of Barbados. You cut across certain demographics. And as I said before, the moral test of any government is how it treats its most vulnerable. Those in the dawn of their lives, the children. Those in the twilight, the ones that I'm especially attracted to, the elderly. And those, Minister, the disabled community. I want to say to you that we as a government, with your leadership, intend to pass this moral litmus test. I am saying to you my first question, because I intend to go across these demographics. My first question to you is related to the children, those in the dawn. I want to know from you, Minister, what is happening with the abuse situation with children in this country as it relates to the level of abuse, and what mechanisms are you and your ministry putting in place, whether it is parenting, whether it is sensitizing the legal fraternity, whether it is the church. I want to know what mechanisms and what outreaches your ministry is having to protect and to stop the abuse of our children. Recognizing, of course, there is a new form of abuse called cyber abuse as well. And your ministry must be able to adapt to the changing times. I want to know from you if there are any safe haven mechanisms put in place after these cases where those children could be protected and where that there could be an environment of care, love, and affection that they need after they are recognized as an abuse situation. I want to know from you what your ministry is doing for these children who will become the future of this country.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I agree with you that we do have some new challenges, as there will be across the world, especially with the cyber abuse and so. But I know that there are protocols in place for child abuse and how it should be treated. And of course, our numbers are growing with the reports on child abuse. And the Child Care Board has that remit to be able to visit, investigate, and if the perpetrators are identified, the authority is there with the act, the various acts, to be able to bring them to justice. Ms. Crawford is the person who at this time is managing the Child Care Board, and she will be able to better explain to you all as honorable members and the public exactly what the situation is like and what is happening. We have the monitoring of the child's rights and so on, that team that is working. A private sector person, a community person is working with it, and the reports are coming through, and they're excellent reports and good work being done. But I would give way to the professional who will be able to give a little more insight into the question that has been raised by the honorable member. Ms. Crawford, please.
Good morning once again. The issue was raised about cyberbullying. For the past 2 years, the Child Care Board has been engaging in education of children. We started with the primary schools. We've been working with the primary schools. We've also worked with secondary schools, and we have been doing that with some assistance from UNICEF. So there's an ongoing program with regard to cyber abuse. On the issue of abuse generally, there's ongoing education. We go to Parent Staff Association meetings, we go to schools, we go to churches. Anywhere that anyone would have us, we tend to do that. We also have pamphlets that when persons come into our department, they're given. We have been doing some wider pamphlets that we give to other agencies and departments so that they can circularize them, which talks about good parenting, positive discipline, and those issues that would impact on abuse of children. With respect to if a complaint is made to the board, what has to happen is that it has to be investigated, and we look at the risk associated with the complaint. When that risk assessment is done and there is a need for a child to be removed from the place in which that has taken place, there is, we tend to go family, community, last resort, residential care, and we look at alternative situations regardless if it's foster care, community care, family. So there is an arrangement where persons who have been identified to be at risk can be removed from that environment. The second component which works with that is the referrals to the Royal Barbados Police Force. They are responsible for investigation under the Prevention of Cruelty to Children Act, the Sexual Offences Act, or any other relevant legislation that would impact on that. It is at that time that the Director of Public Prosecution would do the necessary if to bring that matter to court. That is not the jurisdiction of the Child Care Board. Oftentimes you hear, well, what is happening with the men, etc. Our work tends to focus on the victim and trying to make that victim as healed as possible, reintegrating and understanding what has happened to him or her that would not have been a result of his or her fault.
I'm sorry, do y'all take part in training or sensitization of the police officers?
We did in the past, and we're looking now to revisit that so that persons will understand under the relevant protocols. We are in the process of developing a toolkit so that everybody would understand what is their role in the process. So we are re-engaging in that way.
My next question obviously goes to those in the twilight of their years, the elderly. And I speak with glee when I said to you, Minister, that there was an event, an annual event called the Senior Games, that I look forward to with anticipation and fibrillation of my heart. Because it was one of the best events on the calendar year. I don't know, Minister, what has happened to that event, but I am sad today to say to you that it does not have that level of enthusiasm and that fanfare that was associated with this event years ago. And I want to tell you, Minister, that, and ask you, what is the plan to reinvent the wheels of time, please, so that these elderly folk not only have the exercise. Of course, we know that there are more prone to the chronic non-communicable illnesses, but the exercise, because one of the things about exercise is if you're happy doing it, it redounds the increased benefit. What I'm saying is, what are we doing about those senior games so that they can rival what is happening in the secondary school? Because they believe, I know at some point in time, those participants, especially the ones who won the events, their particular disciplines, would have had the opportunity to go overseas and represent Barbados. I want to know what is happening to this event and how can we make this event the marquee event of our local championships. and sporting championships. Can you please elucidate for me, please?
Thank you very much, Minister. I love your enthusiasm when it comes to working with the elderly. It's a great joy. It is a great joy. Since I don't want to generate any, Madam Chair, I am not sure where the comedy is coming from, but I was really very pragmatic in what I'm saying, in that there are very few people nowadays, it would seem, who reach out to the elderly with that kind of enthusiasm. And I want to thank the Honourable Minister for helping to bring it to the fore. And I am really very happy to be an integral part of the National Senior Games. I fit into the category very perfectly now, ma'am, and became first in the race we had last year, where it was a revival of what happened in the past, where the interest had dwindled quite a bit. But last year, we were able to see numbers generate. And of course, we've got a number of institutions that are catering to those who are aged or elderly, as we would rather say, and aging with grace, like BAMSAC and BARP and those institutions, among many others in the communities who came on board last year. And we had one of the most wonderful times. It's a pity that the Honourable Minister did not participate in that race where we would have beaten him. But ma'am, I'm getting as serious as ever, because we have started again this year, having reaped that measure of success last year. We have started our plans. Things are at the stage where we are ready for June again this year for the National Senior Games. And we are still keeping our focus on live well and live long, because that is what is really happening in Barbados, where people believe that by the time you reach 60, you should really shut up and go home. But it is, and the kind of investigations that are taking place, and when we see how our population is aging, there are persons who are 65 and 70 and even 80 who still have a tremendous contribution to make, and it is our duty to continue to look after them, because the non-communicable diseases are taking over, and we want for our elderly to continue to live long and to live well. And so the last year, because of our showing at the stadium and the excellent outcome, we're integrating the youth and the activities at the stadium again this year, if the Lord spares our lives, so that that intergenerational linkage can come in. Because you would appreciate that a lot of young children are home with parents and grandparents and others, but there's little or no dialogue or interaction. And we want to make that activity a family-oriented one, where individuals will come, teams will come, and actively be engaged. Last year, we had some visitors from in the region, from the Virgin Islands, and they were extremely excited at the concept alone. They participated, and this year we're looking at going regional, to be able to invite some of our regional brothers and sisters to be on board and to be able to get involved to make that tremendous change. I'm going to, Madam PS, give any other further detail, except to say that last year we were so happy to have a centenarian and two other persons in their 90s who walked and brought over the torch from Combermere School to the stadium to start the games. So it goes to show that we are really looking after the needs and the interests of our elderly as we go through this era of Barbadians becoming older, living longer, but we must add in that component of living healthier, because if they're not in good health, then all of the challenges fall on the backbones of the whole economy, but more particularly the hospital with the drug service and communities that will be impacted upon them if they are unable to help themselves. But I will rely on Madam Permanent Secretary. Is that enough? Yeah, in the interest of time, yes, I may have, but I believe that the Honourable Minister could add anything else to it, and I hope that my response, ma'am, will help him to be able to continue to rejoice and enjoy his life as he continues to admire and work with those who are aged, to give them that sense of pride and wanting to live even longer as they have the relationships linked with the youth.
I can only promise you, the Honourable Minister, that I will do my best to make sure that the very sinew of my collective being goes towards having, ensuring that those persons are protected and that they can enjoy the twilight of their years. Minister, my last question to you relates, and you would have answered a part of it in your opening remarks as it relates to the disabled community. This is another area that I'm very sensitive about. And I want to know from you, because I realize that your ministry is making certain steps, because we have to make the next step in the right direction for these persons. And you have I saw that you opened the center for them, which will provide proper accommodation, and then you're doing your best. What I want to know, as we try to make these individuals, about 30,000 or so, as independent as possible and reintegrate them into the workforce, giving them a tangible stake. There is a fear in the disabled community that when they start to work and make improvements in their life, that the grant that they're given, that grant will be stopped, will come to an abrupt end because of a policy decision. I want you to explain to me and to allay those fears for the disabled community, because there is a serious fear that if they become independent and they start to work and reintegrate in the system where they are getting paid, that this grant that they usually get on a monthly basis, that this will come to a premature halt. I want you to give them the calm assurance this morning that that is not the case, or what is the case in terms of from a policy perspective.
Thank you, Minister, Honourable Minister. What you're saying is really news to us. I am not aware of those individuals who begin to do a little job at home, because the disability may be with movement, the mobility, and not with the hands. And so they can do computer services, do their own little postcards and so, but we have not got any policy at all, ma'am, in the making to inhibit those persons who are now on welfare from receiving benefits because they've reached the stage where they have been empowered to want to help themselves. And there's no point in talking about the Ministry of Empowerment, people empowerment, if we're going to remove that small stipend from them. I cannot speak to it in any extensive way, but that is news to me. But I will want to help through this medium to allay their fears, that we will continue to work with them. We would expect that if any of them wins the lotto, if they are part of the lotto, that they will not be wanting to rely on the welfare department, because another of those 500 most vulnerable families, perhaps, or those almost 1,000 vulnerable households will require that kind of assistance for those who are in such a particular position. But I would like to allay their fears that there's no plan, as far as we at the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs are aware, that any stipend is going to be stopped from the disabled folk. I know that every year there is a reviewing of the funding that comes to individuals, because sometimes persons die and the report is not made. And if the funds continue to go for that disabled person or that senior citizen who would have been laying on it, they do their review. But we have already indicated to them from the management level, do not stop any funding or any resources that are being extended to someone who is disabled, because most of the time, persons who are disabled will never get any better. And therefore, they will be reliant on it when it comes to Pampers, when it comes to food and clothing, when it comes to walkers and walking sticks and hearing aids and prostheses. They're reliant on those as well. They're human beings too. And I always say, as was the case before, made by them in their theme one year, that disability does not mean inability. And if we are encouraging them to be empowered, to become self-sufficient to a point, I can see no reason why we will want to withdraw that grant or that financial assistance that's being extended to them. So that is only a myth, like the myths that people are putting about the COVID and Barbados and so on. It really is not in keeping with the policy and the standards that this government has put forward to be able not only to help the disabled, but all other vulnerable persons in this society who require that assistance.
Thank you. And the final set of questions from the Honourable Member for St. John. No, sorry, St. Philip West. Shame on me.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you. One of the officers spoke a lot about the programs that you have in place and things that you've been doing to deal with men in particular, and this was of interest to me. I want to first find out, after you've done the programs, what is then done in terms of measuring the success of these programs, and if the information coming out of these things can be shared with my ministry in particular, and also with the wider public. I think a lot of the problems that we face in Barbados are, and I think it becomes uncomfortable for a lot of people, they're cultural problems. They're behaviors that have been inculcated in this society for many, many years. And people are very often seem to be afraid to confront them head on. And I would like to think that going forward, that the ministry responsible for culture may be a good way to help to work along with what you're doing. At least you guys take the lead and give us some direction in terms of simple things like messaging and other things like that that can go to targeted parts of the society. But I'd like to know, what do you do in terms of the measurements, and if there are some things that you can share with us?
Thank you very much, Minister, for your question. It's an important one. And you know, most of the time, we do not share data. Some institutions within the government and the other sector, they hold that data under their wings. But we are willing to share the information, because it's not only the Gender Affairs Department that is doing the training with males, but as I indicated earlier, the HIV/AIDS department is also doing some excellent work and sharing what they have and putting in funding in the projects that we are doing across the ministry to ensure that the males are brought up to scratch. So like a month and a half ago, when I attended a workshop for men only, 100 men, inclusive of some men on the block, they were in that location at the Accra Beach Hotel, Savannah Hotel, beg your pardon. And I was amazed at the young men who were a part of it with the more senior males, and they were discussing matters to do with men and so on. And the women were ordered out of the room, and they were right, because the women are very dominant, and sometimes the men need to have the opportunity to be together to discuss. But I agree with you, because when you share the best practices, and we share with our ministries, because all of us are in this together, whether it's the economic affairs, the labor movement, wherever, we need to share. So I agree with you, that result must be shared, and the messaging is also integral to what is happening, because we need now, having gone through the training, to go to the next level and to reach out. And I have a tremendous difficulty in what we are doing that will be pertaining to ordinary folk, and I'm not saying that in any derogatory way, but they're ordinary folk who belong to the PTA, who belong to the men's group, the church groups, and so, that will never leave the community to come to any hotel, guest house, you name it, to do that kind of discussion. Our community centers and our pavilions must be properly used, and our churches and so on, schools in the villages must be utilized, because the first thing people say, I am not going, I don't have the gear to wear. I don't have the appropriate clothing. Perhaps my language is not going to be the best through a microphone in an environment that is new to me. So we need to do that outreach, and we have been starting and targeting that, especially with our parenting program that's coming on board in a few weeks' time, with the training of trainers for our parents as well, because that is lacking. But I will let Mrs. Boyce, with the expertise that she has in that department as manager, to say to you exactly what has been happening, so that the new ideas that we'll share here today coming from our colleagues here will help us to be able to shape as we go forward into the new financial year, so that we can turn Barbados around and let our men know that we treat them with the love and respect, and the contribution that they make is extremely integral to what is happening in this society, because we are one people together, and the men and the women must work together in unity if we are to save our society, especially the new generation. So I'll ask Mrs. Boyce, please, to give you any response that is forthcoming.
Okay. Honorable Minister, in terms of the men programming, we have a men's committee, an internal men's committee that comprises members of the health groups, the men's health group from the various polyclinics, as well as the Anglican Men's Association, as well as MISA. What we do, we meet on a regular basis, and they develop programs. When a program is done, there's always a rapporteur at that session, and the rapporteur submits a report. What happens then is that they have a session afterwards to look at the outcome of the program, what took place, what needs to be done, and how can it be improved. And they use that information then from that program to look at what is the next program they're going to put in place, and also as a means as to evaluate the success of that program. So we have all the reports from the rapporteur, and through the PS and through the minister, that could be shared with your department.
Thank you very much. Last one. My last question goes to the family. When I was a child, our concept of a family was mother, father, and nuclear family, as they would call it back then. Families today have changed. The world around us has changed. But oftentimes when I come into conversation with some people, there are still these very well-ingrained prejudices towards the different types of families that we have now. And people oftentimes will blame a lot of the problems within families on this very thing. Could you speak a little bit to the programs that you have which would help to get people to understand the changes that have taken place around us and will continue to take place around us, and what are the fundamental tenets of strong families? Because I think that if we don't do that particular type of messaging, we're still going to be battling with old ways of looking at things and the other prejudices that come across for that. Even in terms of the extended family, from my own experience, the extended family was very important in the past in helping single parents and others to raise children. Today, that seems as if it's almost going through the door. So I'd just like to know what the ministry is doing in terms of getting these types of messages out there, and how, again, how could my ministry help if needed? Thanks.
Very much, Minister. I agree with you that we have changed our family structures and what families do together and how families are treated generally. And I would not want to give my experience here in the interest of time, but indeed we have fleshed out the components of what we will want to offer to the public, acknowledging that families are falling apart. They have not fully fallen apart because there's still some decent, hardworking people in the communities who are nurturing children on evenings after school when their parents are out working, especially if they're working shifts, and they're doing an excellent job and should be honored for nurturing 4 and 5 little children rather than have them running all around when people taking advantage of them. And of course, we heard about the abuse and so on that has been taking place among our children and affecting our children. So I am really very thankful to them. Those people in the communities who are helping out, those persons who are working at the schools, helping to do things with them with the before and after care programs. Those are critical as well when parents are both going to work and the little children are dropped off to school at 7 o'clock. So that system has already been put in place, and those persons who are heading up those activities, they are doing an excellent job. I speak with a measure of authority for the little school in the village where I was raised. They call it Holy Innocents High, because there is a program there, and that's where my grandchildren would have had their own preparation in a job like this because they live with me. So we are doing that, but we've pulled together our own program, and we have had the expertise of Parados and others to give us the guidelines and to lay out the plan going forward during this financial year to be able to ensure that we reach more families and tell them the intricacies of parenting. It does not have to have a degree. One does not have to have a degree to be able to parent. Our foreparents did not, but because of the extended family units, we were able to hold our children together and pass on those values and the mores and the spiritual development and so on. But the separation now into the new kind of family units, where it is now mom and dad perhaps alone and little children on their own. And they talked about the latchkey children who go in at 5 years old and they're there until 7 and 8 o'clock, and they can go on the devices, go on the TV, eat what they feel like. People could come and board them and push them in the house, take advantage. So I know that our whole society is changing, and I am thankful that the Ministry of Culture is reaching out to us, because we can find synergies, we can find ways of community programs that will help to strengthen what we are doing. I would ask Mr. Pollard, please, to speak to it, because he is the person working in the department and helping us to come up with those novel ideas that he has got from his training and experience, to be able to say to us a couple of the things, in the interest of time, a couple of things, but the generational linkages are what I will continue to say is the major pillar, where grannies and granddads, godmothers and so on, retirees can come into the schools, come into the homes, work with those little children to help to pass on those kinds of standards that we have been able, as a society now of older persons, benefit from, that our children are lacking as a result of it being absent from most of what we are doing. And I want to thank the churches as well. A lot of them do excellent work. But I'll give over to Mr. Pollard, since I'm no longer in the teaching system. I may not be current because I'm in that Elder Affairs department. I therefore would rather Mr. Pollard, who is a young, handsome gentleman with the expertise, to make brief comments as to what that department is doing, sir. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and Honourable Members of Parliament. Thanks very much, Minister. I appreciate it.
Saying that you young.
Minister, the question is topical, actually. We have commenced on the 29th of February, Train the Trainer program for parenting training in Barbados. And we are going to have about 3 phases of that particular program. And that is so that we would be able to, we would have a pool of trainers who would be able to go into the community and to disseminate the information to groups of parents in the community. So yes, we are on the ball with that. Interesting, you talked about the types of families, because that was the topic that was covered on Saturday as well. So yes, we are in the process of rolling out a national positive parenting program, and you'll hear a lot more about it in the very near future.
Thank you very much.
I saw my daughter can't come home, and we know it's very westernized now, with a list of the different types of families. And I must admit that I had some issues with one of them. Are the parents being involved in your, for instance, well, I guess this might be Ministry of Education, involved in what they want their kids to be exposed to with respect to different types of families? I hope you get what I mean.
Yes, Chair. This program is going to also include trainers, social workers from the Ministry of Education. And what will happen is, because the Ministry of Education, I've been told, will also implement a training program throughout their ministry. So that, to cut a long story short, we'll include the parents. Yes, we'll have training for our parents in the Ministry of Education. We are looking at that collaboration, yes.
Thank you. Honourable Member, you may give your wrap-up now, 10 minutes, and then ask the head to stand part.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, colleagues. I want to give this Honourable Chamber and the public of Barbados the assurance that the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs will continue to offer the kind of high-quality service that we have been offering for years. And of course, we are going to be doing novel things that we believe will help to further empower the residents of this country to be able to want to continue to live and appreciate what is happening in this society, and of course, to be able to offer their services as well. The Honourable Prime Minister has been gracious in extending an extra amount for us last year, that $5 million amount to be offered to those in the welfare department. It has gone a long way in helping to satisfy the needs of the most vulnerable person in our society. And we would wish, in working with the other departments under our care, the Strengthening Human Project and so on, to be able to reach more vulnerable families, because we were only tipping the iceberg when we started with the 13, the Icy Bridge. But now that we've recognized what's happening in the society and acknowledging that, yes, we are into the BERT program, we believe that we should still have that responsibility of reaching out and embracing others who, because of their plight, are not responsible. That's the first thing, as well as those persons, they have the need, but because of the pride, some of them just don't come out. So the investigations that are taking place with our social workers out in the field day in and day out, to be able to bring in that necessary information, to make us aware as to what is happening and how we can reach to them, to be able to help to empower them, because the program is not only to give out a voucher from welfare or funds, but it also includes aspects of education and empowerment, teaching them how to prepare themselves for writing a CV, talking to them and training them as to how to prepare themselves for employment when they have been given an opportunity, and what it is about when it comes to decent work ethics once they get the job, to be punctual and regular and to be properly attired and to offer quality service to the clients and so on. So there are various components in there. Some of our persons in our team, meaning the team now of persons in the most vulnerable category, many of them will not have completed secondary education. So the necessary training is there for them, and you will appreciate, ma'am, that there are a lot of people who may not have concluded secondary education for whatever reason, and therefore it does not mean that they are what we call duncy or that they are dumb, but because of the circumstances under which they would have been brought up, where there would have been limited money, or they were superannuated, or they just followed the crowd, they did not advance, and so opportunities are there, for them to be able to go to the SJPI or to the training board, or even at the community college, to be able to pursue some of the training that they can then eliminate those deficits that show their faces, and they can come into the workforce and be able to help one another. You know, at one point in time, we had a theme and a project called Welfare to Work. We are working to make sure that we have to lift people out of poverty, out of that dependency mode, into an element of interdependency. And so we will continue to work with them, and I would like to encourage the disabled persons. We will and let them know that we will continue to look after their interests, not only those persons, but the various institutions across Barbados that have been tithing their time and resources to be able to ensure that the disabled receive the benefits. There are some institutions, I can only call a few in the interest of time, ma'am, but you will appreciate that the Salvation Army, the Prison Fellowship, and some other private institutions working with the Challenger School and the Learning Center and so, and the Derek Smith institution, the Sandy Lane Trust and others, and the Maria Holder Trust, they are all coming on board and helping, but we have people in the communities who are doing it. There are some parents, because they have had disabled children, they too have organized their own community projects to be able to reach out to others, and I want to laud them for their faithfulness to the exercise, but also to indicate that in our budget this year, we have cordoned out funds, set aside funds for them to be able to get, what do you call them? Subventions that they can continue those reports, and we are working with them to help them to pull the finances together, because if the government's funds are offered, we expect to have proper financial reports coming in. I forgot to mention the hub from the Roman Catholic Church, that too is doing excellent work. We have the homeless with Mr. Safri. They too are doing some outstanding work that will help to strengthen the plan that we have for housing those persons who have been displaced for whatever reason. And so we are working with them to make sure that the funds are properly accounted for and that the programs that they institute will reach out to the individuals. We are working with other ministries because we don't want any institution to be operating on that basis of a silo, because whatever happens in education that impacts on them falls into the hands of the People Empowerment Department. It falls into the hands of the Home Affairs Minister. It falls into the Ministry of Labor, the Ministry of Culture, across the board. And so we will continue to have that kind of dialogue within our various ministries to be able to pick up the slack or to be able to give the kind of direction that will make a difference in the life of all of our Barbadians. And it is our mantra that no one must be left behind. And so if we say no one must be left behind, it means all of those individuals that are in the various departments across the island, and we can share with the Ministry of Health, Education, and so on to be able to make a difference. And there's nothing more encouraging, ma'am, for individuals who feel that they have been left out of the loop for whatever reason, that when our social workers go to communicate with them and they reveal their particular individual or family situation, there's always some kind of direction that they're pointed in that gives them that renewed hope to want to continue to live and to see how they can achieve the goals that have been outlined to them as we go forward. Yes, we know the funding is limited. Yes, we know staff is limited, but we will try our best, because some of our officers triple up and double up when it comes to projects of this nature, because they have that passion and that understanding that whatever small role they play or large role they play, it helps to trickle down into the rest of the society to be able to empower others, particularly our children, our disabled, and our elderly, plus the impoverished. And so, ma'am, I can attest to you the fact that we will do our best in the People Empowerment and Elder Affairs Department or Ministry to be able to fulfill that mandate that has been extended to us, to be able to ensure that we leave no one behind. It will take time, and you will appreciate that people who get displaced, we do not have an automatic fix for them to get shelter or for them to get the other services that are required. But when we work together as a body, it's like our human body, where each part of our body is linked to our brain. And the hands have their own role to play, the teeth have their own role to play, the brain has its role to play, the feet have their role to play. And once we pull together all of those synergies, I am sure that we will be able to make Barbadians understand and be able to determine that these distinctive ministries, when they come together and pool the resources, human and otherwise, that we can make a difference in their lives. And as I said, it can't happen overnight, but we will continue to work together. And bit by bit, little by little, I believe that within the next 10 years or so, we will be able to help to do with the elimination of poverty to an extent, and of course to the other vagrancies that impact on the lives of individuals. I cannot close except I extend our sincere gratitude as well to those other international institutions that have come on board to be able to work with us. As Mrs. Crawford has said, UNICEF, we have PAHO, we have so many FAO, we have so many other international institutions that offer grants and so on to help us to strengthen the projects that we are doing, the IDB as well, to strengthen the projects that we are doing to be able to make a difference in the lives of others. Yeah, and I say, ma'am, as I close, when we reach out and touch another life or another heart, it gives them that kind of inspiration to want to go forward. And I close by asking those among us who are now retired, who have come out with excellent skills, having government and then they themselves as personal sacrifices they would have made to be able to go to do training, whether it be locally or overseas, the retired social workers, the retired teachers, police officers, health workers, fire officers, and so I am pleading to them today from this honorable chamber, ma'am, come on board and work with us, not only in our department, but in education and health and others, because we need those resources more than ever. Because they have retired, it does not mean that they are now useless. we want them to come on board, because when we rely on their expertise, we can then have them working in communities, helping us to be able to shape families, to deliver to them, the parenting that is necessary to deliver, making sacrifices, to talk to all young girls about modesty and caring their bodies, and I don't want to say deferring of sexual activities, but living those wholesome aspects of life as young children, especially those that are under the age of 16 and 18. Once we have persons in there who can mentor them and give them that extra guidance to put them on the path of being upright citizens, I believe that we will be able to go further in life. And I cannot close without thanking the faith-based organizations, the sporting facilities, and the persons who work therein for coming on board and giving us of their service of the highest level, and they are asking for nothing. It is our duty to extend to them our sincere gratitude at this time, because we do not always get it to do it on an individual basis, but we thank them and all other institutions, including the media, for helping us with the messaging and helping us to reach the rest of Barbados, to be able to serve those particularly who are less fortunate, that come under the watch of all of these ministries compiled to be able to make the difference in their lives. So we want to go from dependency to dependence and to interdependence with the various projects that we are pursuing. And we want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister and her team for helping us to be able to chart this path and to provide us with the necessary funding to be able to deliver most of the programs and policies that we are pursuing for this new year, 2020-2021. And I wish to thank my staff as well. They are one of the most devoted teams, and I have to say publicly here, when it comes to pulling together for us to be able to come to offer the programs and the policies that are offered to the public to make a difference in their lives. And I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of the government as well.
Could you ask that the head stamp?
I therefore, ma'am, wish to ask that head 35 stamp part to the tune of $71,775,745.
Question is that head 35, Ministry of People and Paramount Elder Affairs, stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. He gonna do. See, that's my point. I'm convinced that we got that here, and I'm convinced of it. I'm convinced that we have people here with that. Screening properly at the airport. And then we got Walker Street Airport happening.
Head 10, Governor General, in the amount of $1,988,865.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 10 do no stamp part.
Beg to second that.
Question is that head 10 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 11, Ministry of the Public Service, in the amount of $8,759,327.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 11 do not stand part.
Beg to second that.
Question is that head 11 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 12, Parliament, in the amount of $9,200,000.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 12 do not stand part.
Question is that head 12 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 13, Prime Minister's Office, as amended, in the amount of $97,698,566.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 13 as amended do not stand part.
Question is that head 13 as amended stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 15, Cabinet Office, in the amount $15,598,529.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 15 do not stand part.
Question is that head 15 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 17, Ombudsman, in the amount of $457,265.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 17 do not stand part.
Question is that head 17 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 18, Audit, in the amount of $944,249.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 18 do not stand part.
Question is that head 18 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 19, Treasury, in the amount of $54 million.
Madam Chair, beg to move that head 19 stand part.
Question is that head 19 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 22, Ministry of Information, Broadcasting and Public Affairs, in the amount of $2,935,214.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 22 do not stand part.
Question is that head 22 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 27, Ministry of Tourism and International Transport, in the amount of $7,338,095.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 27 stand part.
Question is that head 27 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 28, Ministry of Home Affairs, as amended, in the amount of $33,500,996.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 28 do not stand part as amended.
Question is that head 28 stand part with amendment. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 29, Director of Public Prosecutions, in the amount of $816,688.
Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, I beg to move that head 29 stand part.
I beg to second that, ma'am.
Question is that head 29 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 30, Attorney General, in the amount of $74,724,405.
Beg to move that head 30 stand part.
Second.
Question is that head 30 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 31, Recommitted and amended, in the amount of $14,141,075.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 31 as amended do now stand part.
I beg to second that, ma'am.
Question is that head 31, recommitted and amended, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 32, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, in the amount of $72,720,650.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 32 do now stand part.
Beg to second that, ma'am.
Question is that head 32, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 34, Ministry of Finance, Economic Affairs and Investment, in the amount of $181,441,613.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 34 stand part.
Seconder?
Beg to second it.
Question is that head 34, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 36, recommitted and amended, Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, in the amount of $28,783,801.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 36 as amended do now stand part.
Beg to second.
Question is that head 36, recommitted and amended, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 39, as amended, Ministry of International Business and Industry, in the amount of $17,602,241.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 39 as amended stand part.
Beg to second.
Question is that head 39, as amended, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 50, Post Office, in the amount of $9,338,896.
Head 50.
Head 50.
Chairman, I beg to move that head 50 stand par.
Beg to second.
Question is that head 50, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 75, Ministry of Housing, Lands and Rural Development, in the amount of $89,202,623.
Madam Chair, I move that head 75 stand par.
Beg to second.
Question is that head 75, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 80, Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance, in the amount of $77,850,633.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 80 stand part.
Seconder? Question is that head 80, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 83, Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, in the amount of $52,328,342.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 83 do now stand part.
Question is that head 83, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 86, recommitted and amended, Ministry of Health and Wellness, in the amount of $207,796,658.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that head 86 as amended do now stand part.
Question is that head 86, recommitted and amended, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Head 87, recommitted and amended, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training, in the amount of $320,144,028.
Madam Chair, I beg to move head 87 as amended do now stand part.
Question is that head 87, recommitted and amended, stand par. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 1,
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 do not stand part.
Question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2 as amended.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 2 as amended do not.
I beg to second that.
Question is that Clause 2 as amended stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 3 do not stand part.
Question is that Clause 3 stand part. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that Clause 4 do not stand part.
Question is that Clause 4 stand part. All honourable members against, please say all honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Schedule as amended.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that the schedule as amended do not stand part.
Be the schedule to
Be the schedule to the bill.
to the bill.
The question is that the schedule to the bill,
The schedule as amended be the schedule to the bill.
the schedule as amended be the schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with a schedule.
Question is, I do not report to the Honourable Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with the amended schedule. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All those against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee with amendment to the schedule.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the bill be now read a third time.
Second.
No?
Second thing.
Okay.
You know how the second reading? The second reading. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the sitting for 10 minutes until 12 o'clock.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 12 noon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 12 noon.